Chapter 1, Invisible Boy, Forgettable Girl. Chris Kent had mastered invisibility long before adulthood made it fashionable. In grade school, it was less a skill and more a natural state of being. Other kids weren't unkind, exactly, just uninterested. They talked to him when they needed to borrow a pencil or when a teacher assigned group work. But once the bell rang, they dissolved into cliques and clusters, and Chris faded into the background like a piece of old wallpaper. Present, functional, unnoticed. He used to wonder why. A lot. Was it the way he spoke? Too quiet? Or the way he never quite knew when to laugh? Or maybe they sensed something he couldn't name. Some invisible film separating him from the rest of them. Eventually he stopped trying to puzzle it out. When you're 8 years old and have already concluded that you are the problem, you learn to stop making problems for others. He made peace with it. Or at least the childhood version of peace. Sitting alone at lunch, reading whatever book he could find, and pretending the solitude was soothing rather than loud. The one exception, the single moment that punctured the monotonous silence, happened on a rainy Thursday in 4th grade. It was near lunchtime when he noticed the girl standing stiffly next to the classroom door. She wasn't in his circle of familiarity. Not that he had a circle, but everyone else seemed to. She was frowning down at her empty backpack, rummaging through it like she wanted to summon food through sheer willpower. She let out an exasperated groan. "I forgot my lunch." She didn't say it to him. She said it to the universe. The universe, predictably, did nothing. Chris closed the book on his desk. You can go through the line and buy something." She gave him a helpless look. "I don't have any money." And the cafeteria lady said, "I've already hit my credit limit for the semester." She slumped dramatically, a little actress in the making. "I'm going to starve." Something tugged at him. A feeling so small that most children might not have noticed it. Instinctive empathy, perhaps. Or recognition. Because he knew what being hungry felt like. And he knew what being overlooked felt like. He reached into his pocket and retrieved 2 wrinkled dollar bills, the entirety of his lunch money for that day. He held them out. "Here." She blinked at him, as if the idea itself were absurd. "No, no, no. I can't take that. It's fine. But you'll miss lunch." He shrugged. "I'm not really that hungry." It was a lie. His stomach was already growling. But for some reason, seeing her distressed made the hunger seem small. She hesitated only a moment before taking the money. "Okay. But I'm paying you back. I promise." She said it with the absolute conviction of a child who believed promises were binding magic. He watched her go, bouncing with relief, and thought that maybe, just maybe, someone might remember him after all. But she didn't. By the next week, she was laughing with friends, and he was again invisible. She never said thank you, never paid him back, never looked his way again, and he never complained. His parents couldn't fix what was wrong with him, so what was there to complain about? He just folded the moment into the catalog of things that made sense only to him. People came, people went, and sometimes a small kindness evaporated into memory without ever taking root. Years rolled on. He grew up. He learned to fit into a quieter kind of life. And unknowingly, she forgot him completely. 2 decades later, the world kept moving with efficient indifference. Chris Kent, age 32, worked in customer service at a mid-sized company that offered subscription-based software support. He answered calls, resolved issues, and excelled at de-escalation. His performance scores were impeccable. His customer satisfaction was near legendary. His coworkers vaguely liked him. They just didn't really know him. He didn't mind. Predictability carried its own form of peace. Solitude was no longer a wound, just a neutral backdrop. A quiet apartment, a stable job, a manageable routine. He had stopped expecting anything more. Spring arrived with rain-washed mornings and a gentle warmth creeping into the days. And with it came a company-wide email announcing the hiring of a new department manager. Someone brought in to streamline performance initiatives and enhance collaborative productivity. Corporate phrases for someone who would inevitably shake things up. The morning she arrived, Chris didn't pay her much attention. Managers came and went. He had weathered enough to know not to get attached to any of them. He was at his desk reviewing a ticket escalation when she walked into the open office area, greeting staff with an energetic, confident cadence. "Good morning. I'm excited to work with all of you," she said, her smile open and unguarded. He heard the voice before he looked up, and when he did, he froze. It was her. Older, sharper, dressed in professional elegance instead of childhood clutter, but unmistakably the same girl, now a woman, who once promised to pay him back and never did. She hadn't seen him yet, and he knew instantly that she wouldn't recognize him. Why would she? She had forgotten him within a week in grade school. Surely 20-plus years had erased him entirely. Chris looked back down at his monitor, grounding himself with familiar keystrokes. This was fine. He didn't want drama. He didn't want attention. He especially didn't want to dredge up memories that mattered only to him. She was a stranger now, a stranger with her face. That afternoon, she walked past his desk while touring the department. Her gaze skimmed the room, cataloging each employee. She greeted others by name, asked about their roles, listened earnestly. When her eyes landed on Chris, she gave him the same polite, professional smile she gave everyone else. "Hi there." she said warmly. And you are? Chris Kent. Great to meet you, Chris. She nodded and moved on, clipboard in hand, already absorbing details about someone else. As she walked away, he exhaled. Not in disappointment, not bitterness, just acceptance. She remembered nothing, and that was okay. Over the next week, the office buzzed with her presence. She reorganized workflows, refined escalation procedures, and made herself available for questions. Most people liked her. She was competent, engaged, and refreshingly direct. Chris kept to himself, not avoiding her, just existing in his usual quiet lane. But something odd began to happen. She noticed him, started small. She reviewed performance metrics and paused at his consistently high numbers. Then she observed the cases he handled, the most difficult, often routed to him without his asking. She watched how he interacted or didn't with the team, how he moved through the office like someone walking in low gravity, quiet, steady, self-contained. One morning, she lingered near his desk longer than usual. Chris, she said, tapping lightly on the edge of his cubicle. Can I ask you something? He turned from his screen. Sure. I've been reviewing your case logs. Your numbers are well impressive. That's good. She blinked, amused by his understatement. More than good. You're consistently handling the toughest clients with the highest satisfaction scores. And you've never missed a deadline. She leaned in slightly. How do you do it? He shrugged. Listen to the problem. Solve the problem. That simple? For me, yes. She studied him with a curious tilt of her head. You don't talk much. I talk when needed. Her lips pursed as if she wanted to question that further. But she didn't. Instead, she nodded thoughtfully and moved on. From then on, she kept watching. He saw the attention, felt it buzzing lightly in the background like static electricity. Attention made him uneasy. Not frightened, just unsettled, like a spotlight he hadn't asked for. But he never said anything, because he knew something she didn't. She still owed him $2. By the end of spring's first month, she had formed a quiet hypothesis. Chris Kent was a vacuum in human shape, competent, diligent, and almost impossibly easy to overlook unless you made a deliberate effort not to. And she was suddenly very interested in not overlooking him. For her, it began as managerial curiosity. For him, it was the beginning of something he didn't yet have a name for. Chapter 2, A Stranger with Her Face. The new manager, Amanda Reilly, as the company-wide email had introduced her, settled into the department with the momentum of a spring breeze that refused to be ignored. She was efficient but personable, authoritative but approachable. In meetings, she asked thoughtful questions. In hallways, she gave warm smiles that softened even the most cynical employees. Chris did his best to remain neutral, to let her presence wash over him without altering the quiet order of his workday. He answered customer emails, solved complicated account issues, and filed escalation notes with the same steady rhythm he always had. His world was a collection of well-defined tasks, each one a small puzzle that made sense when most other things didn't. But Amanda had a knack for drifting into his periphery. The first week, she walked by his workstation frequently. At first, he assumed it meant nothing. Managers like to look busy, and walking with a clipboard gave them something to do. But after the third day, it became obvious her glances were not coincidental. She watched him work, watched customers respond to him with trust and relief, and watched how he simultaneously led the pack in quality metrics while avoiding all human interaction. It was a paradox, and Amanda adored a good puzzle. On the morning of the 8th workday under her leadership, she approached his cubicle again. Chris knew she was there before she spoke. Her perfume, something light and subtly floral, always announced her about a second before her voice did. "Good morning, Chris," she said brightly. He finished typing his response to a billing inquiry before turning. "Morning." She rested one hand on the cubicle wall, leaning just enough to signal openness without crowding him. It was the posture of someone trying to be unintimidating. He appreciated the attempt. "I've been looking over everyone's weekly metrics," she said. "Yours stand out. In a good way. I'm glad." She arched a brow, smiling. "Do you ever elaborate on anything?" "If needed." She laughed, a soft, breathy sound that suggested she wasn't sure whether he was teasing her. "I'm starting to get that about you." He didn't respond. Silence was his default setting. Amanda studied him again, longer this time. It wasn't evaluation, not in the managerial sense. It was human curiosity. That was more dangerous. "Can I ask how long you've been with the company?" she asked. 7 years. 7. Her eyes widened. "That long? And you've never moved into a senior or supervisory role?" "No." "Why not?" He shrugged lightly. "Never needed to." Amanda blinked, not understanding. Most people he'd met always needed advancement, recognition, validation. He never had. Comfort was his currency, and leadership roles were notoriously expensive. She changed angles. "Has anyone ever asked you to step into one? Because if not, that's a mistake." "I've been asked," he said calmly. "More than once." She stared at him. "And you turned them down?" "Yes. But why?" A beat of silence passed before he answered. "Didn't want to. The simplicity of it almost made her laugh again. She rubbed her forehead, leaning in just slightly closer. You're going to make me work for every piece of information, aren't you? I'm not trying to be difficult. No, she said, smiling. You're just very contained. He almost chuckled. Almost. Later that afternoon, she called a short team meeting in the small conference room near the break area. Chris sat in the back, as he always did, perfectly positioned to exit unnoticed the moment everything ended. Amanda entered with her tablet under her arm, a half-finished iced latte in hand, and a confident stride that made everyone straighten a little. Okay, she said, tapping her tablet to cast the presentation onto the wall display. I've been here long enough to observe some impressive strengths, and a few opportunities we can improve on. Overall, we're a high-performing team, but we can be even better. There were nods, a few murmurs of agreement, and, she continued, one of the biggest assets we have is someone who consistently outperforms expectations without ever making a big deal about it. Chris felt his shoulders tense. Amanda glanced toward the back of the room. Chris, would you mind standing for a second? He blinked. Why? Her smile softened. So everyone can see the person whose metrics we should all be learning from. He sat still, completely still. Half the room turned toward him. Attention. Pure, pointed, undesired, pressed against his skin like heat under a magnifying glass. Amanda's brow furrowed slightly, not with annoyance, confusion. She didn't yet understand that spotlighting him was like depriving him of oxygen. After 5 unbearably long seconds, she spoke again. It's okay, Chris. You don't have to stand if you don't want to. He exhaled quietly. She pivoted with managerial grace. Point is, we're going to start implementing a peer shadowing process, and I'd like Chris to be part of developing it. Chris stared at her, faintly horrified. Shadowing. People watching him work. More attention. He suppressed the urge to sink through the floor. Please see me after the meeting, Chris, she added gently. He did not want to see her after the meeting, which meant inevitably he would. After everyone filed out, Amanda waited near the conference room window, arms loosely crossed, expression soft. She didn't look angry. She looked concerned. That was worse. Chris approached with cautious steps. You wanted to talk to me, he said. She nodded. I noticed you didn't like being singled out. He kept his tone neutral. It wasn't necessary. Maybe not, she said carefully, but I'm trying to build a team culture where people get recognized for their work. I don't need recognition. That's not really the point. It is for me. Amanda sighed quietly, her gaze drifting toward the hallway before returning to him. I wasn't trying to make you uncomfortable. I know. You're very hard to read. You know that? So I've been told. She let out a small laugh. Of course you have. A moment of silence settled between them. Not tense, but delicate. She shifted her weight, tapping the edge of the conference table lightly with one finger. Chris, she began thoughtfully, I've been observing how you work. You're calm under pressure, you handle the toughest clients, and you have a natural way of simplifying complicated problems. You have leadership potential. He looked at her flatly. No, I don't. You do, she insisted. You just don't see it yet. Or maybe you're imagining it. She smiled wryly. I don't imagine things like that. If anything, I tend to underestimate people before I overestimate them. He didn't reply. She took that as her cue to push forward. Would you consider taking on a small supervisory role in the new project initiative? Nothing huge. Just helping organize the shadowing process and giving input on workflow improvements. I prefer to stay where I am. She nodded but didn't back down. I understand that. But before you shut the door completely, I want you to know that I would support you every step of the way. And I promise, that word. He felt the corner of his mouth pull into a small, involuntary grin. Amanda stopped mid-sentence. What? Your promises, he said softly, are useless. Her eyes widened, taken aback. Excuse me? He studied her face, searching for the flicker of recognition that never appeared. So he said it. You still owe me $2. There was a long, perfect pause. What? He gave a small laugh, genuine, warm, amused. 4th grade. Lunch money. I gave you $2 so you could eat. You promised to pay me back. She stared at him, baffled. I what? I don't remember that. I figured. No, seriously, she said, stepping closer, brow furrowing as she tried to sift through decades of childhood memory. You're telling me I borrowed lunch money from you? Technically, you panicked, and I offered. And I didn't pay you back? Nope. She looked appalled, then embarrassed, then strangely touched. Oh my God. I have no memory of that. I know. But you do. He shrugged. Some things stick. She pressed a hand to her forehead. Wow. I was a terrible child. You were fine. Just hungry. Amanda let out a flustered laugh. I cannot believe this. I feel like I should Venmo you right now just to clear the debt. Interest would be substantial, he said dryly. She laughed again, this time louder, brighter. Okay. I deserved that. Chris watched her reaction. The way her expression softened with guilt and amusement intertwined. It was oddly endearing. And for the first time since she arrived, he realized something unsettling. He liked talking to her. Not because she demanded it or because it was his job, but because she reacted to him with sincerity. Amanda exhaled, shaking her head as if trying to reset a mental puzzle. Well, you've certainly given me something to think about. So have you. She gave him a searching look. Then maybe we're even. Not until I get my $2. She grinned. Challenge accepted. And with that, she stepped past him, leaving Chris standing alone in the soft hum of the conference room lights, unexpectedly amused, unexpectedly unsettled, and unexpectedly aware that his quiet life was no longer as untouched as it had been. Chapter 3, Gravity Meet Vacuum. Amanda Reilly prided herself on reading people. It was a skill that had propelled her through promotions and earned her the reputation of someone who could walk into a chaotic department and coax it into harmony within weeks. But Chris Kent? He was an enigma wrapped neatly in a cardigan. 2 weeks into her new role, she had learned that the team was full of colorful personalities, chatty analysts, opinionated senior reps, jokesters who gathered by the break room coffee machine like migrating birds. Amid all that bustle, Chris stood, or rather sat, apart. His desk existed in the middle of everything, yet he somehow operated as though he inhabited a pocket universe where small talk could not trespass. Amanda found herself drifting toward him again, under the guise of casual observation, of course. On Tuesday morning, she approached just as he finished a call. His tone had been steady, soothing, the verbal equivalent of turning down the volume on a crisis. When he hung up, he typed up the summary with practiced precision, his fingers moving quickly but calmly across the keyboard. "Morning, Chris," she said. He didn't jump or startle. He just turned slightly, acknowledging her with the smallest tilt of his head. "Morning. How's your queue today?" "Manageable." Her lips twitched. "That's your favorite word, isn't it?" His expression didn't change, but she sensed the faintest ripple of amusement. "It's accurate." Amanda rolled her eyes playfully and perched against the edge of the neighboring desk. "You know, I've never worked with someone who gives answers like they're rationing syllables. I speak when necessary," he said. "And who decides what's necessary?" He met her gaze evenly. "I do." That earned a laugh from her. Chris's mouth lifted half a millimeter, his version of a smirk. She leaned her shoulder against the cubicle wall. "You run this department's toughest calls like it's nothing. I've never seen customer escalations resolved that fast. They're just puzzles," he said. "People want to feel heard and want their problems fixed. That's all." "That's not all to most people," she replied. "Some employees avoid those cases like they're radioactive. I don't mind them." "Why?" "Less small talk." Amanda choked on a laugh. "You're impossible. I've been told." She crossed her arms and studied him openly. Too openly. Chris felt it, that faint pressure of someone's focus settling on him, and he quietly shifted his attention back to his screen. Not rudely, just instinctively retreating. Amanda didn't take the hint. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You already are." She pressed her lips together. "Okay, let me rephrase. I want to ask you something, and not as your boss. Just as me." Chris looked back at her, wary but not closed off. "All right. Do you ever feel lonely?" She hadn't meant it to come out so bluntly. She winced at herself. Chris blinked once. Not offended, just taking a moment to decide how to interpret the question. "I'm used to being on my own," he said finally. "It's not really lonely. It's just quiet." Amanda considered that. Quiet doesn't always mean comfortable. It does for me. But doesn't it ever get too quiet? He paused. A long pause. Then, sometimes, she felt something in her chest tighten. Not pity, but recognition. He said it so gently, so without self-judgment, that it struck her more deeply than she expected. Before she could respond, a coworker called her name from across the room. "Hey, Amanda. Quick question on the onboarding checklist." She straightened. "Be right there." As she turned back to Chris, she offered a soft, acknowledging smile. "We'll continue this later." He gave a small nod, but privately hoped she'd forget. Spoiler, she did not. Amanda was not subtle by nature. She tried, especially with the quieter types, but when something intrigued her, she pursued it with the same determination she used on complicated budget forecasts. And Chris intrigued her. She noticed the way coworkers drifted around him. Never hostile, never dismissive, simply not connecting. He wasn't avoided. He was passed over like background furniture everyone took for granted. Yet he was the strongest operational backbone in the entire department. She found herself watching him in micro moments. How he leaned forward when focusing. How his brows furrowed slightly when reading something complicated. How he sometimes smiled faintly at an amusing email but never mentioned it aloud. He was a quiet, sort of compelling, a gravitational pull wrapped in silence. One afternoon, she brought her lunch into the break room and found him sitting at the far table, eating a plain turkey sandwich while reviewing a printed document. He looked up when she entered, expression unreadable. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. He considered the question with more seriousness than most people gave major life decisions, then gave a small nod. She sat across from him, unpacking her salad. You print your tickets? Sometimes. Why? Easier to focus. She stabbed a bite of lettuce. You're a fascinating man, Chris Kent. That's not a word I hear often. Well, you should. He said nothing, but the faint shift of his shoulders suggested discomfort. Amanda softened her tone. I don't mean it in a bad way. I know. But attention. He lifted a hand, searching for the word. It's not my favorite. She smiled gently. I'm starting to realize that. He didn't look up, but she saw the corner of his mouth twitch. They ate in companionable silence for a moment. It was less awkward than she expected. Chris didn't fill space with noise, but he didn't suffocate it either. He simply existed, steady and calm, like sitting near a warm lamp on a cold day. Finally, she broke the quiet. You know, she said lightly, most new managers spend weeks figuring out who their top performers are. You made it easy. That wasn't the goal. Maybe not, she said. But you stand out whether you want to or not. He shook his head. You're mistaken. No, I'm not. Her certainty startled him. He looked at her fully for the first time since she sat down. You don't even remember me. Amanda blinked. What do you mean? From school, he said quietly. You didn't remember me. The words landed gently, without accusation, but she still felt a sting of guilt. Chris, I really am sorry about that. You don't have to be. I do, she insisted. I should have remembered. He shrugged. You had other things on your mind. Kids don't think about the quiet ones. Amanda hated that he said it so casually, as if he were stating a weather report. I'm trying now, she said softly. Something flickered in his eyes, something he tried to hide. She didn't push. Later that day, Amanda hovered near his workstation again, tablet in hand. She cleared her throat. Chris, can I steal you for a minute? He saved his notes and followed her to the conference room. Once inside, she closed the door. Chris immediately looked wary. I promise this isn't bad, she said. I just wanted to talk. You talk a lot. And you talk very little. I think we balance out. He exhaled through his nose, an almost laugh. Amanda leaned against the table. I'm curious about something. No surprise. Hey, she said playfully. I'm your manager. Curiosity is part of my job. Your job is procedure and oversight. Incorrect, she said. My job is people. And you are interesting. That's subjective. Yes, she admitted. But I'm rarely wrong about these things. I don't try to be interesting. You don't have to, she said softly. He looked away, unsettled. She continued. You told me attention isn't your favorite thing. It never has been. Why? He hesitated. Then, with surprising honesty, because the few times people noticed me when I was younger, it usually meant I'd done something wrong. Or they needed something. He paused. Or it didn't last. Amanda swallowed. Chris, I don't say that for sympathy, he added quickly. It's just how things were. Amanda stepped closer, resting her fingertips on the table between them. Her voice softened. I'm not going to forget you. A quiet shock flickered through him. He masked it as best he could, but she saw it anyway. Why? He asked. Because, she said with a small, warm smile. You're worth remembering. He didn't know what to do with that. Nobody had ever said it to him before. And as Amanda walked out of the conference room, Chris remained still, hands loosely at his sides, heart beating with a strange, unfamiliar warmth, half discomfort, half hope. Whatever gravitational pull she had brought into his life, he had no idea how to resist it. Chapter 4, The Kryptonite of Attention. Chris had always assumed that attention was like weather, occasionally inconvenient, sometimes uncomfortable, but ultimately something that passed. What he hadn't anticipated was a version of attention with persistence, warmth, and an agenda. Amanda's. By the third week of her tenure, she had fully locked onto him. Not aggressively, not intrusively, but with the focus of someone who had discovered a fascinating new species and needed to document its habits. And now she was pitching him a leadership role. It started innocently enough. She invited him to her office with a polite knock on his cubicle wall. He followed without complaint, though his every instinct told him that closed doors were danger zones. Her office wasn't intimidating. It was bright, cozy, decorated with a tasteful fern and one motivational print that read, Progress, not perfection. She stood behind her desk with nervous energy, like she rehearsed and discarded 3 different scripts before he walked in. Okay, she said, gesturing toward the chair opposite hers. I want to run something by you. Chris sat. All right. She clasped her hands on her desk. I'm starting a performance improvement initiative. Nothing major, just a workflow modernization project. I want you to take on a subordinate team lead role. He blinked. Why? Because, she said, you're already doing half of what I'd need from a lead. You handle the hardest tickets. You train new hires without realizing you're doing it. And, she tapped a finger meaningfully on her desk. You have presence. He stared at her in disbelief. I have presence? Yes. No, I don't. Amanda leaned forward. You do. It's quiet presence, but that still counts. Chris rubbed the bridge of his nose. Quiet presence is just existing. And yet, she said pointedly, people listen to you. They listen to me because I fix things. Same difference. It's not. Amanda huffed, exasperated but smiling. Okay, fine. But listen, this project would be a great opportunity. You'd be perfect for it. I promise you'll enjoy it. There it was. The word. A faint spark lit behind Chris's eyes, and his mouth curved into a slow, unmistakable grin. Amanda frowned. What? Why are you smiling like that? Your promises, he said softly, almost affectionately, are useless. She gaped. Excuse me? He tilted his head, studying her with a calm that made her feel like she was missing an inside joke. You still owe me $2. Her arms fell to her sides. You're seriously bringing that up again? It's factual. I was a child. You were also very insistent about paying me back. She sputtered. I didn't even remember until you told me. He gave a quiet, warm laugh. Exactly. Amanda pressed her fingertips to her temples. Chris, I am trying to offer you a leadership opportunity. A good one. And I'm trying to tell you I'm not built for it. You could be. I don't want to be. She opened her mouth, then closed it, recalibrating. Chris watched her carefully. She wasn't frustrated, not in a resentful way. More like she was navigating a maze and discovering that the walls moved when she wasn't looking. Let me ask you something, she said finally. If you really dislike attention, why does the $2 thing matter to you at all? He shrugged. It doesn't matter. It's just memorable. Amanda frowned. Why? Because, he said simply, it was the one time someone talked to me without needing something from me. She sat back slowly. That landed deeper than he intended. His tone wasn't bitter, just factual, the way someone might comment on the weather. Amanda's expression softened painfully. Chris, she murmured. Don't worry. I got over it. In 4th grade, he considered. 8th, maybe. Amanda let out a breathy, incredulous laugh. You're impossible. That's also factual. She stood up suddenly, unable to sit still any longer. She paced once behind her desk, gathering her thoughts. When she stopped, she leaned on the edge of the desk and looked at him with an intensity that made him straighten instinctively. Listen, I'm not trying to force you into anything, but I see potential in you. I appreciate that, he said quietly. But you don't believe it. It's not about belief, he replied. It's practicality. I like what I do. I'm good at it. I don't need to change anything. Amanda folded her arms. Maybe you don't, but I keep thinking about what you said, that people only noticed you when you did something wrong or when they needed something. She paused. I don't want to be that person. You're not. I'm asking you for something. Yes, he said. But you're not asking me for you. You're asking because you think it benefits the team. That's different. Amanda stared at him, thrown by how precisely he cut through her motives. You read people better than you think. No, he said with faint amusement. I read you better than you think. That made her blush. Actually blush. She cleared her throat. Well, regardless, I'm still offering the role. And I'm still declining. She sighed, then smacked her palms against her thighs in resignation. Fine. But if you ever change your mind, I won't. Just tell me, she finished, ignoring him. He almost smiled. She sat back down, gathering her composure. Okay, new topic. Chris braced himself. I want to repay you. He blinked. The $2? Of course the $2, she said, exasperated. You've been holding it over my head like some kind of moral IOU. He shook his head. I'm teasing you. I know, she said. But I still want to make it right. It's not necessary. It is to me. Why? Amanda hesitated, longer than he expected, and when she spoke, her voice was softer than before. Because I don't like the idea that I hurt you, even as a kid. Chris stared at her. She looked uncomfortable, guilty, earnest. All at once. She was genuine, and sincerity aimed directly at him felt like sunlight. Too bright, too warm. He looked away. You didn't hurt me. Maybe not intentionally, she said. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Silence stretched for several seconds. Finally, she sat up straighter. Okay, here's my proposal. He groaned internally. You're making a proposal for $2? Yes. This is unnecessary. Nope, she said confidently. This is happening. I am going to repay you in a way that feels fair. And what would that be? She grinned. You'll find out. Chris stared at her, alarm blooming. Amanda, not negotiable, she said brightly, as if she were announcing a company picnic. He exhaled. I regret telling you. No, you don't, she said. Because now I get to annoy you with gratitude. He couldn't help it, he laughed. A real one this time, brief but unmistakable. Amanda froze, eyebrows lifting. Was that? Did you just? No. You did. It wasn't a laugh. It definitely was. She smiled so brightly that it felt like the office lights dimmed out of courtesy. He shook his head. You're imagining things. I'm thrilled by my imagination then. He rose slowly from his chair, sensing the conversation nearing its quota for emotional vulnerability. If that's all, she nodded, trying not to look too pleased with herself. That's all. For now. He headed toward the door. Oh, Chris. He paused. I meant what I said, she told him gently. You're worth remembering. His chest tightened. He didn't look back. Have a good afternoon, he said quietly. You too. He left her office with steady steps, though his heartbeat was anything but steady. He could feel her eyes on him even after the door clicked shut. And in the privacy of the hallway, Chris let out a slow breath. Attention wasn't weather. It was gravity. And Amanda Reilly had become a force he couldn't seem to ignore. Chapter 5, Memory Lane. And a pothole, Amanda Reilly spent the rest of the week in a state of intermittent bewilderment. Every time she passed Chris's desk, every time she remembered the way he'd calmly told her you still owe me $2, every time she replayed his gentle, unmistakable laugh, it all created a peculiar mix of amusement and guilt swirling somewhere between her ribs. She should have remembered him, or at least remembered something about him. But her memories of grade school were a scattered scrapbook. Stickers, snacks, classroom crushes, a handful of embarrassing moments, none of which included the quiet boy with dark eyes who'd silently saved her from hunger. How had she forgotten him so completely? It bothered her more than she expected. By Friday afternoon, she couldn't stand the nagging feeling anymore. She needed clarity or at least closure. And if there was one person who could give her the full picture, it was the man who had carried the memory for 22 years. She found him at his desk after the 3 p.m. rush, typing steadily as he resolved a technical issue. His posture was relaxed, but his focus was absolute. He always worked like he was defusing a bomb with calm, measured certainty. Got a minute? She asked gently. He finished his sentence before turning. Sure. She gestured toward a quieter corner near the windows. Walk with me. He raised an eyebrow, suspicious of the wording but compliant. He stood and followed her. The windows overlooked the parking lot and a stretch of budding spring trees. Soft sunlight filtered in, giving everything a warm glow. Amanda crossed her arms, not to be defensive but because she suddenly felt awkward. Okay, I need you to tell me more about this $2 situation. Chris blinked once. Why? Because I'm trying to remember, and it's driving me crazy. She gave him a helpless half smile. I can see flashes, cafeteria lights, the line, my empty backpack, but nothing clear. It feels like looking through fog. He studied her face for a long moment. She didn't try to hide her sincerity. So he spoke. You were standing near the classroom door before lunch, he said. You were digging through your backpack like you were trying to summon food from thin air. Amanda groaned. That sounds exactly like me. You looked frustrated, he continued, but mostly hungry. I was always hungry, she admitted. Still am. Chris's lips curved slightly. You said you forgot your lunch, he went on. And you didn't have any money. You said you'd starve, which seemed dramatic at the time. It was dramatic, she said. I was 8. Everything was dramatic. You weren't wrong. He paused. I gave you my $2. Amanda pressed a hand to her heart. My hero. It wasn't a big deal. It was to 8-year-old me, she said softly. Even if she had the attention span of a fruit fly. That's accurate. Amanda winced. Ouch. He glanced sideways at her. You asked. She laughed because she could feel it now. The edges of the memory sharpening. The shapes filling in. A little girl with tangled hair and frantic eyes. A quiet boy sitting at his desk, offering what he had without hesitation. And after that, he finished. You promised to pay me back. Amanda grimaced. Which I did not do. No. She hesitated. What did I do afterward? You went to lunch. She blinked. That's it. He nodded. I didn't come back and talk to you? No. I didn't say thank you? No. Amanda's stomach twisted. She felt the guilt surge in ways she hadn't anticipated. God, that's awful. You were a kid, he said softly. That's not an excuse, she insisted. I should have something. Anything. You didn't owe me anything. I owed you $2. He huffed. A silent laugh, the barest lift of his chest. You were 8. You forgot. Amanda opened her mouth, then closed it. She leaned her shoulder against the window frame, her expression tightening with a realization she didn't like. You remembered me, she said quietly. Not you. The moment. Same thing. He shook his head. I remembered giving someone $2. I remembered someone being kind afterward. Kind. She stared at him. I literally forgot you existed. He considered that. Maybe not kind, but grateful. In the moment, she swallowed hard. And I never talked to you again. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. They stood in silence for a moment, watching a group of employees head to the parking lot below. Finally, Amanda spoke. Do you know why I think it's bothering me so much? I can guess. She narrowed her eyes. Don't you dare say it's guilt. It's guilt, she groaned. Ugh, I hate how correct you are. Chris shrugged. It's logical. No, she insisted. It's something else too. Something about how easily a person can slip through the cracks. His expression didn't change, but she saw something flicker in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or resignation. How many people, she continued, did I treat that way? How many people did everyone treat that way? Kids are oblivious, but still. He met her gaze calmly. Amanda. What? You're not responsible for the universe. She stared at him. He added, only your part in it. That is such a Chris thing to say. I hope that's good. It is, she admitted. Annoyingly, a soft quiet followed. Amanda crossed her arms again, hugging her elbows. I want to make it up to you. You don't have to. I know, she said. And that's exactly why I want to. He sighed. Gentle, resigned, maybe a little fond. Amanda. Nope, she interrupted. This is happening. I'm not letting 8-year-old me haunt us both. You're the only one haunted. Well then, she declared. I'm fixing it on behalf of both of us. How do you plan to do that? She hesitated, then brightened with a mischievous smile. Oh, I have a few ideas. Chris felt unease creep up his spine. That's concerning. It should be, she said cheerfully. You will receive repayment. I already told you. I don't care, she said. A promise is a promise. He stared at her, then murmured, you really are determined. Yes. And stubborn. Yes. And dramatic. Absolutely. Despite himself, he smiled. You haven't changed much. She froze. Emotion flickered across her face. Soft, startled, warm. You remember what I was like, she said quietly. I remember that day, he corrected. But he didn't deny the implication. Her voice was gentler than he'd ever heard it. And you still gave me your lunch money. He shrugged. You were hungry. Amanda studied him for a long, unguarded moment. Something new passed between them. Something subtle and delicate. Recognition, maybe, or the first quiet thread of connection. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For remembering. She paused. And for letting me remember too. Chris didn't speak. He didn't need to. That evening, as Amanda packed up her things and headed for the elevator, her thoughts kept circling the same simple truth. Chris Kent wasn't just someone she had overlooked. He was someone she never should have. He was calm where she was kinetic, quiet where she was animated, thoughtful where she sometimes rushed. And beneath that stillness was a depth she had not expected, and was beginning to crave discovering. She stepped into the elevator, heart oddly buoyant. Repayment was coming, not because he demanded it, but because she wanted to give him something he had never been given, attention he did not have to earn. And maybe, just maybe, a place where he would never be invisible again. Chapter 6, Repayment Plan. Chaos Edition. Amanda Reilly approached problem solving with the confidence of someone who had never once failed a group project in her life. When she set a goal, the universe typically rearranged itself to cooperate. Unfortunately for her, Chris Kent was not the universe. He was Chris, which meant her repayment plan, her carefully crafted, multi-step, good intentions wrapped in chaos repayment plan, was unraveling spectacularly. Everything started Monday morning when she marched into the office with a purpose bright enough to light a small city. She carried 2 coffees, a bakery box, and the determined expression of someone about to fix at least 3 emotional wounds before lunch. Chris, unfortunately, was at his desk. Good morning, she chirped, sliding a cup onto his desk. He stared at it like it was radioactive. What's this? Repayment, she said proudly. For $2? It's symbolic repayment. He eyed the cup. This costs more than $2. Exactly, she said, beaming. Interest. He blinked slowly, the way someone does when they're trying to process a situation using logic that doesn't apply. Amanda, he said calmly, you can't repay childhood lunch money with overpriced caffeine. Yes, I can, she argued. Because childhood grievances require adult solutions. He sighed. It wasn't a grievance. Now it is. He exhaled through his nose, which she had come to interpret as Chris Kent for I give up. She pushed the bakery box toward him. There's a croissant too. Amanda. Eat it. I eat, she repeated, pointing at the box like a general ordering a battalion forward. He opened the box, glanced at the perfectly golden pastry, then looked back at her with deadpan resignation. This is bribery. It's repayment. It's definitely bribery. Amanda crossed her arms. Same thing. He picked up the croissant, considering her with a mixture of exasperation and unwilling fondness she didn't yet recognize. You're relentless, he murmured. That's what they tell me, she said, lifting her chin proudly. Attempt number 2 of Amanda's repayment plan occurred the next day. Failed instantly. She decided that since Chris didn't like attention, she would repay him in a low-pressure environment. Lunch. A simple, quiet, peaceful lunch. It was almost peaceful, until she showed up at his desk again. Lunch? She asked brightly, holding a second meal container. I brought mine. I know. She extended the container as if offering a sacred artifact. This is better. What is it? Homemade chicken teriyaki with sesame? No. Her smile froze. No, I don't like teriyaki. Amanda blinked. Who doesn't like teriyaki? Me. That's statistically improbable. Still true. Everyone likes teriyaki. I don't. Then you're an anomaly. I can live with that. Amanda stared at him, baffled. Okay, fine. We'll try something else tomorrow. No. Tomorrow, she repeated, already walking away. Chris leaned back in his chair, groaning softly. She was going to give him an ulcer. Attempt number 3 should have worked. Should have. Amanda had overheard Chris telling a coworker once, only once, about how much he liked the piece of reading during his breaks. So naturally, she decided to repay him in the form of thoughtful literary enrichment. In other words, she bought him a book. She approached his desk with a carefully wrapped, rectangular package. He eyed it suspiciously. Amanda, why is something rectangular and ominous approaching me again? It's a gift. I don't do gifts. It's not a gift, she corrected. It's repayment. That's worse. It's a book, she said, offering it like a peace treaty. A really good one. He slowly unwrapped it, then stared. The Art of Social Ease, he said flatly. Amanda froze. Okay. In my defense, the woman at the bookstore said it was witty and helpful. It's a guidebook for social skills. Soft social skills, she said. Gentle ones. Chris lifted the book like it might bite. Amanda, I didn't mean anything by it. I know. It's supposed to be funny. I don't want to read about extroverts explaining how to be human. Amanda groaned into both hands. This is not going how I planned. Really? She glared. I'm trying to repay you. And I'm telling you it's unnecessary. But I want to. You're overpaying. She deflated. I'm bad at this. Chris looked at her for a moment, then, unexpectedly, softened. You're not bad at it. You're just very enthusiastic. That sounded diplomatic. It was. She sighed. And he said gently, Amanda, you don't have to repay kindness. Maybe not, she whispered. But I want to repay you. And there it was. A silence settled between them. One warm, one charged. One he didn't know how to unravel. Attempt no. For was an accident. The chaos kind. It began when she paired him with Daniel from the onboarding team for a 20-minute workflow brainstorming session. It lasted 6 minutes. 6. Daniel was enthusiastic, talkative, loud, a hurricane in human form. Amanda returned to the meeting room to find Daniel happily chatting to an empty chair. Chris was gone. Daniel waved at her cheerfully. Oh hey, Chris left, he said, and I quote, I need air. Then he walked out the door. Amanda felt dread tighten her stomach. When? About a minute ago. She thanked him and left the room. She found Chris outside the building, leaning against a railing, taking slow, steady breaths like someone trying to lower their heart rate. Amanda approached cautiously. Hey, are you okay? He nodded. Yes, you left pretty fast. I needed space. I'm sorry, she said gently. I didn't think it would be too much. He gave her a sidelong look. It wasn't accusing. It was simply honest. Amanda, Daniel speaks like his lungs are chasing him. She snorted despite herself. Accurate. And he uses his hands too much. Also accurate. And he calls everyone buddy, including the vending machines. Amanda burst into laughter. Chris watched her laughter with quiet awe, like he couldn't decide whether it comforted him or scared him. Okay, she said, recovering. That pairing was a mistake. No more hurricane humans. I promise. His eyes flickered. Your promises? Don't even start, she warned. I swear to God, Chris, I am good at other things. He smirked faintly. I've noticed. She blinked, startled by the softness in his tone. He pushed away from the railing, standing straighter. Amanda, you don't have to fix anything. You didn't do anything wrong. I know, she said quietly. But I want to understand you, and be someone who's paying attention. He looked away, jaw tightening. That's the problem, he murmured. What is? You're paying attention. Amanda's breath caught. Before she could ask what he meant, he added, I'm not used to it. Her heart tugged painfully. Well, she said, maybe that's not a bad thing. He hesitated, then met her eyes. And for a moment the world stilled. By Friday, her repayment attempts became a departmental legend in the making. Though Chris tried desperately to avoid attention, and Amanda tried desperately to help him avoid it too. But something unexpected had changed. He talked to her more, voluntarily. He didn't retreat as quickly. His tone softened. His eyes warmed. He even smirked now and then. Not sarcasm, not superiority, just amusement he didn't try to hide. He was still Chris, still quiet, still calm. But there was an unmistakable shift in the gravitational field between them. And late Friday afternoon, as she reviewed the workflow draft he had improved, she realized something unsettling. Her repayment plan had never really been about the money. It was about the boy who had once been invisible. It was about the man standing before her now, still quiet, still self-contained, still trying not to be seen. And it was about the part of her that wanted, more than anything, to learn how to see him properly. Chapter 7, Fun. Against his will, Chris Kent did not believe in destiny, cosmic nudges, or fate wearing business casual heels. But if he did, he might have suspected the universe of conspiring against his peace, because every day that week, Reilly found a new and inventive way to prod him out of the quiet stability he'd perfected over decades. And now she wanted him to have fun. Dangerous words. Alarmingly enthusiastic tone. Truly terrible idea. The department's new project initiative was officially underway, and despite Chris's repeated, and increasingly futile, attempts to avoid any leadership title, Amanda had managed to involve him in a support role that suspiciously resembled leadership disguised under lighter vocabulary. Friday morning, she strolled into the office with a stack of printed workflow drafts hugging her chest and an expression of pure triumph. Team, she announced cheerfully, we're meeting in conference room B in 10 minutes to finalize the project outline. Several co-workers groaned. A few nodded. Daniel, human hurricane, gave a thumbs up that made Amanda flinch with the memory of Chris's low-key trauma. Chris sat rigidly at his desk, hoping, however irrationally, that if he stayed still enough, she might forget about him. She did not. Chris, she said, stopping directly at his cubicle entrance. You're coming too. I figured. Good, she said, though she frowned slightly, studying his expression. You look like someone told you the building is on fire. That would be easier to manage. She laughed. Oh, come on. We're just talking through project ideas. That's the problem. Amanda gave him an exasperated smile. It'll be fine. I promise, he raised an eyebrow. She cut herself off mid-sentence, scowling. Don't say it, he shrugged. I didn't say anything. You were going to. Possibly. She smacked his arm lightly with her folder. Get up. We're making progress today. It's optional progress. Not anymore. He sighed, stood, and followed her. Conference room buzzed with end-of-week fatigue. Sticky notes covered a large whiteboard. A dozen coffee cups formed a half-structured battalion across the table. Amanda took her position at the head, radiating commander of operations energy. Okay, she said brightly. Let's jump right in. Chris sat near the corner, notebook open, pen ready, expression deceptively neutral. He wasn't unaware of attention. He simply avoided attracting it. But today, Amanda was determined to drag him to center stage. First topic, she said. Ticket triage. I want suggestions. People tossed out vague ideas. Auto-sorting. Color coding. Sub-cues. Amanda wrote them down, but her eyes kept sliding to Chris. Chris? She prompted. He froze internally. He began slowly. I think some of this could work, but we'd have to reorganize the categorization first. Go on, she said, beaming. A dozen heads swiveled toward him. Chris inhaled discreetly to steady himself. High-urgency issues should be separated from high-visibility ones. They overlap a lot, but they're not the same. If we build a filter that identifies emotional distress keywords, frustrated, angry, confused, that'll help us route calls faster. The room was silent. Then several coworkers nodded. That's actually really smart, one said. Amanda grinned. He's full of ideas. Chris shifted uncomfortably. It's just logic. Good logic, Amanda said. Keep going. He continued slowly at first, then with growing ease. Once he began explaining technical patterns, he forgot the eyes on him. He described patterns in call escalation cycles, bottlenecks in documentation workflows, and methods for reducing duplication between teams. When he finished, the room was quiet again. One of the senior reps blinked. Why aren't you leading this project? Chris blinked back. Because I said no. Amanda coughed into her hand to hide a smile. The meeting continued, and the more he spoke, the more she watched. Not like a manager, but like someone seeing something beautiful emerge unexpectedly. An hour later, the meeting ended. People dispersed with newly focused energy, energized by the clarity Chris had provided. Amanda lingered near the whiteboard, collecting sticky notes, when she realized Chris was slipping out the door. Hey, she called. Wait up. He paused reluctantly. She caught up to him in the hall. You did great in there. I spoke, he said dryly. That's all. No, you contributed, she insisted. Your insights really helped. He considered that. It wasn't as bad as I expected. Amanda lifted a brow. You mean it wasn't excruciating? Marginally less than that. She laughed. I'll take it. They walked side by side toward the break room. Chris adjusted his pace unconsciously to match hers, which she noticed and didn't comment on. You know, she said, I'm proud of you. He stopped walking. Amanda nearly bumped into him. What's wrong? He looked at her with a depth she didn't expect. Don't say that. She blinked. Why not? Because, he said quietly, I haven't earned it. Her chest tightened. Chris, you don't have to earn basic human kindness. He looked away. She stepped in front of him, blocking his path. Look at me. He reluctantly met her eyes. When I say I'm proud of you, she said softly, it's not a medal. It's not something you compete for. It's recognition. For effort. For growth. For stepping outside your comfort zone. He swallowed. And, she added, For being someone who's worth paying attention to. He closed his eyes briefly, overwhelmed. Amanda didn't push further. She stepped back, giving him air. You're changing the team already, she said. And yourself, even if you don't see it. He exhaled. I don't want to change. But you are, she said gently. And it's not a bad thing. Silence stretched, comfortable this time. Then Amanda nudged his arm lightly. And for the record, I told you this project would be fun. He stared at her flatly. I'm not having fun. Liar. His mouth twitched. Maybe a little. She grinned triumphantly. Ha! Don't celebrate. I will absolutely celebrate. You're ridiculous. And yet, she said breezily, you're still here. He sighed in defeat. Unfortunately. Oh, please, she teased. If you truly hated this, you would have found a way to transfer to Antarctica by now. He rolled his eyes. Cold, quiet, minimal people. Sounds ideal. I'm not letting you move to Antarctica. That's controlling. Too bad. He shook his head, amused despite himself. You're impossible. And you, she said, are finally coming out of your shell. Just a little. I'm not. You are. I'm not. You are. This time he laughed. She froze, startled again. You did it again. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. You're imagining things. She beamed. Imagination is a gift. No. In your case, it's a weapon. She nudged him with her shoulder. Chris. He looked at her. Her voice softened. I'm glad you're trying. He didn't answer with words, but he didn't retreat. And that was enough. At the end of the day, as employees packed up their things, Amanda stood at the exit reviewing her notes. Chris passed by, heading for the door with his usual unobtrusive calm. Hey, she called. He paused. She walked up to him, holding out a small envelope. Repayment installment. He sighed. Amanda, open it, she insisted. He did. Inside was a single, crisp $2 bill. Brand new, uncreased, carefully centered in a little card that read, You were never invisible. I just didn't know how to see you yet. Chris stared at the bill, at the message, then at her. His voice was barely a whisper. Amanda, it's symbolic, she said lightly, though her voice betrayed a quiver. Don't overthink it. He closed the envelope carefully, like something fragile, like something valuable. Thank you, he said quietly. She smiled, soft, warm, a little breathless. You're welcome. He stepped through the door into the warm evening air, and Amanda watched him go, her heart unexpectedly full. Progress, not perfection. And for the first time, she understood the phrase on her office wall. Chris was not just changing. He was letting her change with him. Chapter 8, $2, one confession. The project launch celebration was never meant to be a big ordeal. Amanda insisted on a small gathering, which, in her vocabulary, meant store-bought cookies, plastic cups, and a Bluetooth speaker pumping out cheerful background music that barely competed with the hum of cubicles. Chris had mentally prepared himself all day for this, or tried to. He didn't like gatherings. He didn't like crowds or questions, or attention-laced conversations about team contributions. He especially didn't like how instinctively people gravitated toward Amanda, which meant anywhere near her was brighter, louder, and harder to escape. And yet, he stayed. He stayed because she'd asked him to. He stayed because her eyes lit up when she saw him walk in. He stayed because something in him, a small, newly awakened thing, wanted to. Amanda spotted him lingering near the edge of the break room and smiled so fully it seemed to catch the wall lights and amplify them. You made it, she said, practically bouncing over. I said I would, he replied, a little stiff, though his eyes softened. Yes, but sometimes you say things like someone being threatened at knife point. I've never been threatened at knife point. That only proves my point, she said, grinning. He sighed, but the corner of his mouth lifted. Throughout the gathering, Amanda flitted in and out of conversations, but she kept drifting back toward him, like a compass that couldn't help but point home. Chris found himself leaning against the counter, hands tucked in his pockets, observing coworkers laugh over paper plates and sugary snacks. When Amanda finally planted herself beside him again, her face was lightly flushed from moving around. You okay? She asked. I'm standing. I'm breathing. That counts. It does, she said warmly. Thank you for being here. He looked down at her, steady but honest. You're the reason I'm here. Amanda blinked. Her heart did a confused, startled flip, but she wasn't ready to unpack it. Not yet. Instead, she cleared her throat and produced a small envelope from her blazer pocket. Chris stared. What is that? Your final repayment. Amanda. Nope, she said, pressing it into his hand. Non-negotiable. You've said that too often, and I will continue to say it. He exhaled. You're exhausting. That's a compliment, she said brightly. He opened the envelope. Inside was a framed, crisp $2 bill, centered, smooth to perfection, in a simple dark wood frame that made it look like an artifact. He stared at it with carefully controlled emotion. Amanda watched his face anxiously. Is it too much? I debated a plaque, or a trophy, or a commemorative, Amanda. She stopped talking. He held up the frame. This is ridiculous. She swallowed. Ridiculous bad or ridiculous good? A long pause. Ridiculous, thoughtful. Her breath left her in a quiet rush. He wasn't finished. And unnecessary, he added. Well, yes, she admitted. But so was you giving a hungry girl your lunch money 20 years ago. That wasn't unnecessary. And neither is this. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I don't know what to say, he said finally. You don't have to say anything. But he did. Because something inside him, something that had been dormant for years, something quietly thawing under her relentless warmth, refused to stay silent. It mattered, he said softly. Back then, it meant something. Amanda's expression changed, slowly, fully, achingly. I'm glad it did. I didn't have a lot of moments like that, he admitted, staring at the framed bill, where someone noticed me, even if it was just for a second. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I see you now. He lifted his gaze to hers, and something in him cracked open. Not painfully, just honestly. Amanda, he said, almost sounding surprised at himself. You've changed my life. Her breath caught. Chris? No, he continued quietly. I need to say this. You pay attention. Not because you want something. Not because you need something. You just, he searched for the right words, care. About people. About me. She froze, because he said me with a softness that hit her like a physical touch. Amanda, he said again, voice steady. I'm not used to that. She stepped closer, instinctively, gently, until only inches separated them. You deserve it, she said. He shook his head. Deserving doesn't matter. I don't know how to. He gestured vaguely, helplessly. Do this. What is this? She asked softly. Chris hesitated. I don't know, he admitted. They stood there in a quiet that didn't feel empty, didn't feel awkward. It felt like the kind of silence that wrapped around two people when something unspoken hovered just above their reach. Then Amanda did something bold, something brave, something entirely her. She reached out and brushed her fingers lightly against his wrist. Not grabbing, not holding, just touching. A question without words. Chris didn't pull away. Tell me something, she murmured. Okay. Now that the debt is repaid. Her thumb grazed the edge of his hand. Do you still want distance? He swallowed. No. It was quiet. It was honest. It was everything. Amanda's breath trembled. Then what do you want? He looked down at her like he was seeing spring sunlight for the first time. I don't know what this is, he said slowly. But I want more of it. Her chest tightened, warm, full, alive. Good, she whispered. Because I do too. A beat passed. Then he added, softly teasing. You still owe me something, though. She blinked. Chris, you can't be serious. Dinner. Amanda's heart stuttered. Dinner. Yes. He held her gaze. I'm charging interest. She laughed. A bright, startled, delighted sound that made him smile in return. In that case, she said, you're getting dessert too. That wasn't part of the deal. It is now. He shook his head, amused. You're rewriting the contract. Always. They stood together, framed $2 bill between them like a relic of a past moment that had grown into something unexpectedly precious. Something new. Something theirs. Chris, she said, voice soft. Yes. I'm really glad you weren't invisible to me this time. His answer was simple. I'm glad you finally saw me. And for the first time in his life, Chris Kent didn't feel invisible at all.